Hey everyone, it's March, which means it's Women's History Month, and I've been telling stories of some of the women in our history that are really amazing. So today I want to take us to the French and the English. They're 75 years into their 100-year war. The cause was a dispute over the French throne. The French population has not regained its strength or its former size since the Black Death of the mid-14th century. So, global pandemic. Think global pandemic. We know about that, right? Of the bubonic plague. The English have nearly achieved their goal of dual monarchy under English control. French, England, under one king. And the French army has not achieved any real major victories in the last generation. Remember, it's been going on for 75 years. And the Kingdom of France was just a shadow of its former self. So the French king, Charles VI, suffers from bouts of mental illness and is often unable to rule, which leaves a little bit of chaos, right? He's got a brother, Louis, Duke of Orleans, and then his cousin, John the Fearless, Duke of Burgundy. And they're quarreling over absolutely everything. You name it, they quarrel over it. And till finally the day the Duke of Orleans is assassinated in 1407, of course, on the order of the Duke of Burgundy. So the assassination divides the country into two completely different factions, and it begins a civil war. Well, 75 years they've been fighting the English, right? And now they're in the middle of a civil war. So this makes them very vulnerable, and Henry VI of England decides to take advantage of this kind of internal division that they've got going on, and he invades in 1415. And this is the world, think of all of that that's going on, this is the world that Johanne is born into. She is born to a peasant family in northern France. She was 3 years old when Henry V invades, and 10 years old when Henry V and Charles VII both die within about 2 months of each other. And the monarchy is given to an infant, Henry VI, and now he's the king of both kingdoms. They finally have achieved their goal, and they have one king over both kingdoms. This is Johanne's world. And when she's 13, when Johanne's 13, she has a vision, and she says it's Saint Michael, surrounded by angels, appears to her when she's in her father's garden, and when the vision's gone, she weeps because she wants to go with the angels, which any of us would have in the middle of a civil war with a nation that's being invaded by a foreign kingdom and on the heels of a plague that they have not recovered from. Now, over her lifetime, she continues to see visions, or visitations, you might call them, from St. Michael, St. Catherine, St. Margaret. And in some of those visions, maybe all of those visions, maybe one of those visions, we don't really know, she's instructed to support Charles VII and recover France from the English domination. Now, Charles VII is the supposed to be the king of France, but there is no French king right now, right? He's the one that would have inherited it. So she makes a request to see the king. Now, I know this doesn't surprise you. She's 16 years old. She's seen visions. She's female. And so she does not get an audience with the king. In fact, she gets declined a couple of different times till finally she probably badgers this garrison commander who relented and gave her an escort to see Charles. And so she tells Charles that she's come to lead him back to Reims for his coronation. That's where kings get coronated. So Charles was impressed with her. They had a couple of different interviews, a couple of different times together, but even though he's impressed with her, he needs more reassurance, right? I mean, she seems a little crazy. So what he does is he sends her through these variety of exams, most of which are with theologians who verify her morality and ensure her orthodoxy. And these theologians agree that sending her into the battle at Orleans could be useful, and at least it would test her. Well, you know what? It could be useful to send anybody into that battle. So why not send her? So Charles sends her to the siege of Orleans, and as part of a relief army that he's sending. And what happens is she quickly gains prominence, and the siege, after about 9 days, is lifted. So she's beginning to have some kind of impact here. A month later, she plays a role in an army campaign, which basically is culminated in a decisive victory, a defeat of the English for the first time in quite a while, right? So after that battle, the French army advances on Reims, I don't know how to say it. And the very next day after that advance, Charles is consecrated as the King of France in the cathedral there, with John at his side. So word gets out across the territory that she has been sent by God to drive out the French. And many times she is the one that is getting this word out. She's writing letters to the French to tell them to leave, to tell them she's sent by God, to a little different kind of scare tactic there. In fact, one of her letters that she wrote was actually attached to an arrow, and she shot it into the ranks of the army there, and the message was, leave. I've been sent by God, leave. So she gets outfitted in an entire kind of armor that fits her. She has a banner, her own banner. She's given a sword, her own sword, which, by the way, she never uses. And what happens is her presence in battles begin to boost morale. They begin to inspire the troops to advance. And during one particular battle, the soldiers are retreating. And when she finds this out, she rides out to them. And when they see her, when they discover that she's there, they let out a shout, a cheer, and they begin to engage in another assault. And this time, they take the fortress. It's amazing that her presence brings so much inspiration. So after Charles is consecrated, after he is acknowledged as the king, at least by his people, the army besieges Paris. Now, that assault is eventually failed, and it's a place where Johanne gets wounded. I think she's wounded a couple of different times, but after recovery, she's back at it. And in May of 1430, she's 18 years old, and she organizes a company of volunteers to relieve the army besieging the Burgundians. So remember, there's a civil war. They're fighting against each other and then also against England. So she was captured by them. She was captured by these guys, the other side of the Civil War, and they exchange her to the English for some of their prisoners of war. And unfortunately, she's put on trial. She's charged with heresy. There's a series of interrogations that they call a trial. We would call them probably something much worse than that. And she has decided, she has agreed with them. They're going to give her life in prison if she agrees to a handful of things. So she's done it. 4 days later, she breaks the agreement. And so she is burned at the stake. She's 19 years old. We know her as Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc, she's this legendary figure, a warrior, a leader, a restorer of hope. She had the courage to go where no woman and a lot of men wouldn't go. She fought for what she believed in, and she encouraged others to do the exact same thing. So on the heels of a pandemic, in the middle of a civil war, while being invaded by a foreign nation, any of that sound familiar? I mean, things don't change much, do they? This is where she rises and brings hope. So I love her story because it shows us that one person can make a difference. It shows us that all battles get won or lost first in the mind. See, she knew she had victory. She believed it. And then it encourages us to go forward and be brave. I'm Michele Gooch with Life by Design. If you are looking for a a way to conquer the battles in your mind, I'd love to help you with that. You can find me at lifebydesign.guru, www.lifebydesign.guru. I'll see you next Wednesday.